So the first thing is you have to know your form before you bother to make any sort of like embellishments or changes to it, right? Like, so until like you have studied Bharatanatyam properly or studied tap dance or whatever, and like you have trained in it seriously enough that you have like mentors of that culture or like this person knows what they're doing, like you just have to do that first, and that's like step zero. You can't do anything else until you do that, right? Which like, Ramita trained Bharatanatyam for like who knows how many years. She still literally goes and visits her guru, right? So like there's that level of like commitment. And like once you do that, I think that the thing that's a struggle in our positions is like, again, when we created a convergence, our goal wasn't to be these like sort of like pillars of like what it means to unite cultures. Like we were just symbolizing our two understandings of what like our meshing of Indian American culture is like. And I think the most important thing to realize is like there are an infinite number of ways to blend two cultures, and neither of them, like very few of them, are like better or worse than others.
Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Chai with Rai. Hi, I'm your host Rai, and this is my show, my baby, my jukebox of hidden gems in which I reach out to working creatives in the entertainment, food and fitness industry, and we discuss all things from life lessons to politics to socialism, culture, history, the digital space, and of course the industry itself. Now, like Gogglebox, if you've ever watched it, this show has all the banter but also meaningful conversations too. And I will also list all the information for the guests, myself, the live video version of this podcast in the bio. Make sure to check all that out and hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Comment and share us in your TikTok stories or Instagram stories. Share us on the Twitter and spread the message of the show because your support really means a lot. And it gives all of the creatives that are on the show a bigger voice, a bigger hug of life. Today, it's gonna be a good day, gonna be you. That is a good song. But today we have two incredible artists on the show who, for me, are part of this South Asian arts community that are pushing heritage and culture forward, but also creating experimental and hybrid work. I am talking about Ramita Ravi and Vikas Arun of Project Convergence. Now, individually, they have accomplished so much and continue to do so, but we're going to get into a bit about them. Now, Vikas is the first South Asian American to be sponsored by Capizio. I hope I said that right. He is also one of the first to receive a residency at American Tap Dance Foundation, and he has performed in Stomp. You know Stomp? His credits include Good Morning America, Good Morning America, So You Think You Can Dance, J. Crew, Vogue, and Lincoln Center. Alongside that, this dude is a guest lecturer at Columbia University, the Foundation School of Engineering and Applied Science, and is responsible for the development and operation of course called Peak Performance, How to Manage Your Art Without a Burnout, which, by the way, is a great podcast name. And also, because if you listen to this, how dare you put all of us to shame? How dare you with your engineering mind and your tap mind and your creative mind? I should have said that to him whilst I was filming this, but we didn't. And now to Ramita. Now, Ramita co-founded a company called Artswork, which is a professional network of creative and artists. I'm going to explain it from a UK perspective. So it's kind of like Backstage meets LinkedIn meets Spotlight and more. And her credits are just like bangs. Let's get into it. Which is also a musical she performed at. Bang the musical, get it? But her credits include Good Morning America, Class Pass Live, So You Think You Can Dance, Hermes, New York Fashion Week, Alvin Ailey. She also choreographed for Ravina Aurora, who just performed at Coachella and is one of the first South Asian women to do so. Now, this is such a meaty chat, you guys, because we get into the creative space in the US, not just from a dance perspective, but also from like a queer perspective. Being a woman, being South Asian, we also get into how they balance their lives that are like creatives and non-creatives, and they're entrepreneurs and they're launching these businesses and they're just badass. And I also ask like inevitable questions such as why South Asian dancers are predominantly brought together for South Asian based projects. Do South Asian dancers need to have a fundamental knowledge in their cultural or heritage dances? The boxing that is Bollywood dance, Project Convergence, their company, and of course so much more. So get your coppers ready and let's dive into this.
Okay, I have a question, by the way, because accents will have me going. Is it Ramita, Vikas, Vikas? What are we doing?
It's not the accent. Literally, no one knows. It's Ramita.
It's Ramita. Okay. Wait, are you both Gujarati?
No, we're both South Indian. We're extremely South Indian, both of us.
I'm just wondering. Just wondering. All right. Before we get into anything, we're going to play a little game. This game is called the 5-second rule. I watched Ellen DeGeneres, and basically you have 5 seconds to name 3 things.
I'm scared.
Wait, are we both going at the same time?
You both are going to go separately. So I'm going to start with Ramita, and then I'm going to go to Vikas to you. And then at the end, we're going to do both. All right. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Ramita ji, in an interview on No Thank You, please can you mention your passion for healthcare? You talk about your passion for healthcare and self-care. You talk how it's your friends know about it. As mentioned already, you've worked with companies such as TED Meds. And you talk about in the lockdown how you watch Netflix, such as Dear White People, Big Little Lies, Quantico. Also, you mentioned that you're just bad at taking care of yourself. Even though you had an injury whilst you were in school, a back injury. So, in the 5 seconds, name 3 foods you should eat on a date. Go!
Bread?
Okay, you have 5 seconds to name things. I just want to let you know that. Ramita collects herself because it's your turn.
Okay.
Okay. People know you as an incredible dancer, but you have a terrific engineer, just background. And in one of the, what was it? You talk about working for a company that builds sensors with weapons to identify when they're being used. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, I just quit for stuff, but yes, I used to.
Okay. Well, you worked for a company. However, list 3 things you thought about your boyfriend when you first met him. Go.
Attractive, funny, sweet.
Oh, that's nice. I was gonna say pick 3 things that annoy you, but then like I have my partner, and I think that's like that's like a thing. How is Brooklyn, by the way? Because you guys have you moved into Brooklyn? You said, right?
Yeah, we've been here for just over a year now, a year and 1 month. So much better than Manhattan. If you ever move to New York, don't move to Manhattan.
I think we stayed in the Bronx when I came over, and it was a wonderful experience. I got my hair braided by a beautiful, big, bosomed Jamaican lady, and I got tonsillitis in the same week.
Oh, that's quite a trip.
Yeah, Americans aren't great with medication over the counter. I had to like show my passport and everything, and it was an experience to say the least.
American healthcare is not the beacon of healthcare in the world, for sure.
I mean, we'll get there. I think there's something happening with Ramita's Wi-Fi, so I will go to you again.
Okay.
Whilst we do that. On an interview for Brown People We Know, mentioned this, by the way, beautiful story. So if this person is watching, which they have joined a live before when I did it with Ishita and Brinda, you both were in a company, or are in a company, the Bollywood company known as Atma Performing Arts. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned this beautiful story on how you connected on tour and you realized you come from the same space and your passions and you wanted to do something together. Do you see where I'm going with this?
Yes.
Yeah. You talk about the fact how you 2 came together and the only day that you guys could film your first ever video was by calling in sick on a rehearsal. Which makes you sufficient at the art of lying. And then you also shared Chaya Chaya and your passion for Shah Rukh Khan and how that got you into dance as you're a child. So that just means you're a great actor overall. Let's just say that, should we?
I don't know if I agree with that statement, but sure, we'll go with it.
I think let's say that. All right. With that being said, in 5 seconds, say 3 things Rihanna would say at the Met Ball. Go.
I'm hot. Chris Brown sucks. I don't know what the third one is.
I'm hot. Can you do a Rihanna impression? Because that would be great.
I have no idea what her voice sounds like. So.
Wow. I mean, you've worked for Vogue.
Yeah, but like she sounds so different in each album. Like, what's her actual voice?
That's for us to figure out. I think she's got a consistent accent, though. How are Stomp the rehearsals going right now? And the show?
We are back open, so most of Broadway is open now. As of Tuesday, the rest of Broadway opened. We opened July 20th.
Nice.
So we're open, not full theaters at all yet. People are a bit scared to come back, obviously. But it's nice to be open and performing for people, and my body is dead. My legs are killing me, but, you know, my body will get used to it at some point, I'm sure. She's back.
She's back. She's back.
Mine totally dropped.
It is so fun. All right. Well, it's your turn, and then you both get to go together. In an interview on Spotify, no, on Dancers Doing Stuff, you mention your hatred for dogs. Let's just take a moment for that. While studying the show,
How did I not know this about you?
I'm scared of dogs. You know? I've gotten better.
apparently, so she said.
Okay,
I'm
hatred.
scared.
Okay.
I don't.
And on your CV, you say that you are a proficient person in Spanish, and you showcase your acting skills in a YouTube sketch known as, was it Drunk Bollywood Mujhse Dosti Karoge. If you haven't seen it, just watch this clip. It's on YouTube. All right, it's beautiful. So with that being said, name 3 fruits beginning with the letter B.
Banana, blueberry, blackberry.
I give you that. All right, good. Well done. All right, this last one is for both of you. If I can find my question, which is, Project Convergence came to be through your passions. As I already said, you guys skipped a wonderful rehearsal. By the way, I've seen the productions that Amit puts for Atma, and we're going to talk about Bollywood. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play a song. All right. And since it's the 5-second rule, you are going to do 3 styles of improv, okay? I'm going to play 5 seconds of each, and every time I say change, you just have to change the style. And since y'all are just like so great at like teaching and dancing, I feel like this is going to be great. Well done. Well done. Well done. And now breathe. How are you today? How's it going? I like to start with a nice little impact and a hurricane of a moment, and then I like to calm things down.
That was fun.
The amount of research on my laptop for both of you, by the way, can we just talk about this? Look at the tabs. Just look at the tabs.
Geez.
That's not even half compared to like what's on my Instagram right now. But how are you doing? We already talked about Vikas, and how, if we haven't, how was your week? How's your day been? What you guys up to?
Go first.
My week has been good. I'm actually I'm home in Pittsburgh, Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania right now. My like Bharatanatyam guru is my aunt, and so I'm at her house, and she teaches at like a university here. So that's why I'm like wearing Indian clothes and stuff, because we like I like went with her today and stuff. So it's been a good day. It's nice to be home.
Vikas?
Good day for me. I am off from shows today. It's my day off. So I took a bath this morning for the sake of my quads, which was wonderful. And then just have called and caught up with some friends. So today is my like chill, do nothing. My friends out at work, I can be lazy around the house sort of day.
I'm here for that. Do you take cold showers? Because I got suggested cold showers by a friend of mine who was a tap dancer, and she was like, cold showers every day.
No, I actually do the opposite, because like now I shower when I come home from a show. So like I come home, I do a warm shower so my muscles are relaxed, and then I like stretch and roll out for like 30 minutes. Because on the nights that I don't do that, my legs will hate me the next morning, like absolutely hate me.
I can only imagine. I just wanted to tell you guys a little story of how I came across your work, even though I emailed you. I am obsessed with DD Con. and I'm a part of the Facebook group. In DDCon is a beautiful, I think Brian created a queer group where there's like queer people and you guys share your story, and I read Vikas' story and I was like, oh my god, this guy's dope. And then Ramita, there's a beautiful channel named Bolly Shake where your video was posted called Hi Rama, and I came across that, and then I was just in that week, I think there was something happening on the BBC, and there were flickers of So You Think You Can Dance that season, or there was just something happening, and yours was there, and I was like, there's a girl doing contemporary in a kurta. I was like, this is very interesting. So I looked it up, and that's how I came across that. So the wonderful world of digital media, which brings us to our first question. It is, how has your outlook and perspective on the industry changed now versus when you stepped into it?
Oh, okay. It's funny because Ramita and I literally had like a 1 hour session to each other about this literally yesterday. I think we're of a weird generation where when we were training and growing up, social media, at least Instagram, didn't exist. Like Facebook was a thing that was new when we were in like, I don't know, high school, middle school, something like that. And so a lot of our training was devoid of like how people get like, or the major way that people think about getting found nowadays. Like we built a lot of our training, and a lot of the mentors we look up to built their careers before any of this like social media existed. So like we're this weird generation where like our models of like people who are successful and like kind of the people we aspire to be, like have a way of building their careers that's through just like a completely different methodology than like what a lot of people of our generation, but also younger than us, like have used to build their careers. Because if like you look at our social media, like our social media picks up like dust compared to like most people, right? Like a lot of like the famous dancers of the world have like hundreds of thousands or millions of followers, and like we don't come even like a percentage of a point close to that. And yet, you know, we're like booking all this crazy work and doing a lot of like different stuff. And we've talked a lot about like it's weird being in our generation of feeling this disparity between like, wait, we're both doing some really awesome work, but also like, you know, the generation under us, like some of the kids we teach have like 12 times the number of social media followers that we do at 9. And you're like, wait a second, like how does this all work? And so I think the biggest change, at least I've seen, I know Ruth and I both talked about this, so I usually don't like to speak for both of us, but I will. Is that like,
you're the spokesperson.
We're like, it's like up to, like, what is the difference between like the social media presence of what people see of your career and like what actually to you is your career and like how you define success? Because like I was complaining to it about with Ramita yesterday. I was like, there are some days where like if I didn't have social media, I would be so happy with my career. But like for some reason, because I see what other people are like presenting or posting, I get a sense of like, oh, but they're doing this other thing, even though that's not something that I want to do. And so like, how do we teach? I think the biggest thing I worry about with like upcoming generations of artists is how do we teach them to find their version of success devoid from what the rest of the world thinks about their career? Because like if your whole family is happy with your career but you aren't, then like who cares? And so I think that's like something I struggle with right now, and I'm like trying to figure out where I lie in the spectrum of like, you know, do I post these things on social media, but it's not about social media, but social media is important for your career, and so how does it all fit in? So that's, I think, a big change that we have been witnessing, but TikTok just made it even more so of a change. So, Ramita, over to you.
So the question was like biggest thing since entering the industry. I think the biggest personal change. So I mean, like we talked about our credits and everything. I think like the biggest thing to like point out about, it's like easier for me to brag about Vikas than myself, but like both of us together, we've been doing this since we were like children, and we have been the only brown people that we saw. Like Vikas is literally the first brown person in this industry that I saw point blank period. And like, you know, there's a lot of Indian people who dance. I think it's like a really different experience to be like in the competition dance world where we grew up. Like we truly were the only people. And I think that's something like, you know, when dance is such a big part of our culture, that's something that's like missed, is that this is like actually a really hard and unique experience. And so we talk a lot about how like when I entered the industry, like there are so many that come with that, right? Of like when I entered the industry, I felt very like stereotyped. It was coming off of So You Think, and so yes, people saw me as like this Indian girl, but really like at the end of the day, like, you know, I do classical and I do like a bunch of Western styles, but that's like, I got so stereotyped into like, I did a bajillion Bollywood things. That was pretty much all of my work was Indian dance, and that's fine. It was just like we both trained like hours a week for like years and years and years in all these other styles, and that's like how we were able to, you know, how we're able to now make careers out of it. So I think like for me, like coming into the industry, there's just there was a lot of like stereotyping. There's a lot of like, this is the box that you're in, and then I felt really, like confused about, okay, like what is my box? Like where am I supposed to fit into this industry, especially when literally no path. And so I think the biggest for me has been being okay with the fact that there are so many different paths, and that like even if you're the first one on all of those paths, like you can just like do it and make it happen. Like Vikas is the first person in Stomp. Like like the agencies that we work with represent maybe like 5 brown people total bi-coastally. Like so it's a really hard space to navigate, I think, especially when there are no role models. But I think like the biggest thing I've noticed is like having like, or we've both, I think, built a lot of confidence in just like being okay with the fact that there's not a lot of us, but we're gonna do what we like are excited about and passionate about in this industry. There's not one way to do it.
There's so many things that you touched on there that we're going to dissect, because I think I'm really always intrigued when I have somebody who's from a foreign space to firstly acknowledge and understand how the space works there when you're South Asian, and then on top of that, an artist in the entertainment industry. So be it if you're an actor, if you're a dancer, or a multidisciplinary person, then I want to dig into the digital space, and we're going to talk about like the competition scene, because I completely agree with that as well. But I want to just touch up on the credential part of it. You guys, like I went through just touching on some of the things that you guys have done, and I'm sure when you guys have put out your CVs and on your website, you haven't even touched the surface, and it's like a demo reel of all of the work that you've done, right? I just want to touch on an emotional perspective, which is how do you deal, because you talked about it on Brown People, that you performed for Modi, and that was like the biggest crowd that you did, and that's like the high, right? So the adrenaline of all of the work that we do, so the contemporary, the ballet, the jazz technique, all of the things that we do, it's training up us for us getting a gig in the industry. And when we get that gig, and then after that, sometimes you have months of no work. Sometimes you have years of no work. And then how important then does it become, this battle of getting work versus getting credentials? And how do you deal with the come down of it?
It's a hard question.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's this idea of like you're either working or you're not working, and you're either successful or you're not. I just like think that's all fake. It's like the whole idea of like starving artist mindset is just a myth that like if you make that your reality, then it's your reality. If you don't, it's not. I don't know. I think like there are so many ebbs and flows. But what's helped me most is like I have filled up my life with and Vikas too, like we judge and we teach and we perform and we do, you know, commercial work, we do theater work, like everything we have like there's so many different projects, and all of them are exciting and fulfilling in really different ways. So I don't know, I honestly don't feel that like super high and then like, oh, I feel like I'm like scrambling to search for a new thing. Like, and with our side jobs, like I think we do a lot of things, but we built this like really nice net. It doesn't feel like time, honestly. Like it feels like, you know, even if it's, you know, what we're doing for a big chunk of time is like teaching. We both love that, like teaching on conventions and teaching kids and choreographing, like we love that stuff. I, again, don't want to speak for a cut, but we love that stuff. Like performing is one. It's like chapters more than like, okay, I'm working and I'm doing really well, and then I'm not and I'm bored. And I feel lucky that like my side job and arts work, like all those things I also really love, fuel me just as much. So like I really don't feel, if it's like if I'm performing one week, like it's an extra bonus, but I don't feel like, oh, okay, then I'm and I like am unhappy or anything. So I think that, and that was not always the case. Like I think I had to build out that like net of just consistency and putting my hands in a lot of different like pockets. But that's what's helped me, is just like having a baseline of like consistency.
Yeah, I think for me, the thing I've learned from the like typical peaks and valleys of an arts career, and as we've kind of like climbed the ladders, so to speak, is that like just because you're doing work doesn't always mean you're happy, if that makes sense. And I think no matter where you are in your like rung of the performance ladder, you always think the people who you see as more successful than you are happier because they're doing the thing that you want to be doing, when that's like often not actually true. Like, I'm sure Ramita can speak to jobs which might have looked fantastic on her resume, but she hated. Like, for me, like, J. Crew paid me amazingly, got featured everywhere, but, like, literally did the Shim Sham, which is the tap dance national anthem, when we were, like, 5, and I did it for 10 hours. Like, and, like, this was not fun. Like, it just wasn't. But, like, I can easily see that, like, another tap dancer looking at me was like, oh my God, he must be so excited that he's on all the social media and got this fantastic opportunity. And like, I'm grateful, but it also, I didn't like come home from that and was like, I want to do that for the rest of my life. Like, I was like, that's fun, but like, check, did a commercial, let's move on. And vice versa, there are things that we can't always show the world, which actually really creatively inspire us. And I think like what Convergence turned into is like a fantastic example of that. Like when we created that Alaripu video, neither of us were like, okay, so the plan is we're going to create this video and then we're going to get a residency and then we're going to have a company and we're going to perform at Lincoln Center. Like, no, we were just like, here are these 2 fun things. We literally almost didn't release the video because we thought it was so bad. But like, we just did it because, and for each project that like might have something to show for it, there's like 10 others that you do that like might not have had something to show, or you might be able to show it later, or like whatever. But like, that's a lot of the work too. Similar to like a startup in the tech world where like once they announce that they have a product, they've already been working for like 2 or 3 years. It's kind of the same thing as an artist, right? But like, I think because a lot of people don't get that, it's hard to explain like, I'm working on this thing that I can't quite show you yet. But like, or like with Stomp, I was working with them for 2 months and learning the show before I could like announce that I was performing. So I think like that's the thing to learn, is like the things that the rest of the world sees as the ebbs and flows are not always your creative ebbs and flows. And so as long as you're investing in the things that you feel creatively positively about, which might be the things you've been working on, but sometimes it also means taking a step back from the things that you have been doing for so many years because now they don't fit in your creative vision. That's, I think, how you maintain like your happiness. Because if your happiness is solely based off of the successes of like the audiences or whatever, then like you're always going to feel unhappy because like somebody is going to your performance, right? And then like if that's your whole self-worth, like that's a really bad thing. So I know like both of us do a lot of like life mapping and career mapping about like, what do I want from my career? Like, how do each of the puzzle pieces fit into this? And if they don't, like, how do I exit the space in a like respectful way while like moving on to something that more aligns with what my like vision for myself is? So the only thing that's constant in this world is like change, really. As long as you're like willing to accept that, it helps you feel comfortable.
I want to talk about race and just the South Asian space. And this is going to be a multi-layered question, like we're going to do it in parts. My first question is, and I asked this when I interviewed Maven from Akron, where I was like, since you guys have a foundation, let's say, so you've trained in ballet, you've trained in jazz, you've trained in tap, you've trained in Bharatanatyam. That's Vikas just by himself, by the way, because he's a tremendous Bharatanatyam. You guys have these foundations. Do you think that the generation coming up, or as a dancer in the industry who is South Asian, that one needs to have a discipline that is of their culture and be grounded in that, has that as a fundamental? And it's such a hard question to ask. I ask this because in the UK, brown dancers are only brought together for brown-based projects. The black dancers are always together for like music videos, like the Dua Lipa video will come out, like it'll be like mixed race dancers, it'll be things like that. Sometimes there'll be just like 2 people auditioning in that room, that'll be like South Asian or mixed race. Some of them have no clue of South Asian fundamentals, and then we all get pocketed as Bollywood. And some of them don't even know what Bollywood is, because the mediocrity of the work that the Bollywood companies do over here, and I'm sure over there as well, some of them is to sustainability, a revenue, and to add like a touch to like a wedding or something like that. And sometimes it's not just the work, like you want to teach general level, and that, you know, does revenue. Or, and then sometimes we're brought together. So like some of us did like a Marvel project, The Eternals coming out. It was like 50 of the UK dancers. So it's a weird space. So do you guys think that as South Asian dancers, you need to have a fundamental or a connection to your culture in the discipline that you're going into? That's my first question. And then if you go as a dancer who's just trained in Western styles, and then you get pocketed into Bollywood, and then it's the cliche stuff, do you think it becomes a responsibility where you do have to go educate yourself, or it's not a responsibility because that's what the industry has kind of like forced on you, and you're just going along with it, trying to live for a paycheck?
A lot of hard questions. On the second one, yeah, I think that like if you've only trained in Western styles and like and you're stereotyped, like that's a hard one, because one, like for me, I would hate that. Like if I didn't know any Indian dance and then that's like all people wanted me to do, I'd be like, even knowing Indian dance and having that be all people want me to do is like makes me sad. Just because no one should be stereotyped, period. Like let's just like, at that level, let's just like nix that. But I think for anyone doing any type of dance style, like yeah, you should know the history of it. Like, and so if you are like doing Bollywood work to pay the bills, whatever it is, no matter what, be educated in that. If you're doing African dance, if you're doing something, you just like need to be educated in the culture you're participating in, because it's just important, whether that's tap, whether that's hip hop, but like knowing that these all came from like communities that have history. Like I think that's always important. So that's what I'd say about the second one. And then the first one, it's interesting because like again, like in the mainstream industry, there's straight up five of us. Like I know, and they're all my very close friends.
Yeah.
Like Vikas, this girl Deepa, this girl Swetha, and then this girl who's one of them I all look up to. Like it's like there's a small handful of us in this kind of like commercial space. We've never really all worked together like in that kind of space, and we all have different lanes in it. But yeah, then like all the projects that I have worked on with other brown people have been brown-based projects that are either like, with actors, and you know, so yeah, there's that kind of tip. I'm curious to hear what you Vikas.
Yeah, for the second one, I'll go backwards just a little bit. For the second one, like absolutely, no matter what style you do, you need to have the artistic integrity to acknowledge whether you are sufficiently trained or not trained in that style. And because you have to hold, like just because my skin is brown, like I've never lived in India, right? So like I think like Mystic India is a fantastic example of this. Like Katie, who's one of the dancers in Mystic India, has lived in Chennai longer than I have lived in Chennai, even though I'm South Indian. Right. So like arguably her lived experience is actually like more Indian than I, like you could make that argument. Right. And so like the point is like when both of us train, like perform in Mystic, there are things that both of us had to learn because there were things that neither of us knew about the various types of dance styles, you know, done in Mystic. I never done mudras before Mystic, right? Like then, and then now I've like learned some of them by watching Ramita and the Bharatanatyam dances and conversion, but I never like sat and trained in any of these things, right? So just because my skin is brown doesn't mean like I get a pass, because like if a white person did that, you'd be pissed at them, right?
Yeah.
Like vice versa, right? Like we get really angry, like for my voice to be sort of like valid in tap dance, which is a black art form, like it's only fair for me to go and study the culture and the history of the form and really breathe it before I even have the gall to like try and add something to it. But then like we have to hold ourselves to that same standard. Just because it's our culture doesn't mean we get a pass, right? Like is it even our culture? Because we're not Indian, we're Indian American, which is like almost a completely different culture from Indians. Like is it even my culture? Like I don't know, right? So I think there's that thing. So no matter if it's, I'm 100% with Amita. Like if I'm doing African dance, like I better have a project that's going to give me African dance training. If I'm doing Kathak, like I've never done Kathak before, you better give me someone who's going to train me in Kathak because I don't really know anything about it. I've seen it, but it doesn't mean I know how to do it. So I feel like that's really important because a lot of, how do I phrase this? Social media South Asian artists in the US have a bad habit of labeling a style as something and just thinking because they label it a certain way that makes the style that, right? So like, I'm doing hip hop. So just because you say you're doing hip hop doesn't mean it's actually hip hop. Like it doesn't look like any street style anything. And so it's really important that we hold ourselves to that standard because then we can't get angry when other people appropriate our culture if we're doing it to other styles, right? Like it's all of this is like a two-way street. So 100% with on that one. On the former, yeah, to Ramita's point, it's very difficult in the if there's a lot of South Asian creatives in the US, but if you focus yourself to like commercial Western dance, right? So like Brinda is fantastic, but she's like doing like fusion work, whatever. So if you focus yourself to like Western commercial dance, yeah, there's like 4 of us who've like not worked together. And to Ramita's point, we're all in such different lanes that like I can't even think of a project. It would be really hard to find a project that makes sense to bring all of us together that is not purely brown, right? Like the point is, here's all the South Asian creatives in the commercial dance space. Like, why would the 4 of us be in? Like, what project would you need a tap dancer and a musical theater dancer and a modern dancer and like whatever? Like, if you remove the skin color from it, there'd be like very few reasons to bring those people into the space. And so, I guess in my case, I don't think it's sad that that's the case because like it seems like that's the only way that it makes sense given the space that we're in. Mm-hmm. But to Ramita's point, once you expand like the bubble to like actors and people doing fusion work and whatever, because we also do fusion work, right? So we work with, or we do shows with Brinda and Ishita and all these other people doing fusion work. Once you open the space to something that has a bit more saturation, then it just feels a bit sad because it's like, okay, there are a lot of South Asians doing fusion work. So why is the only time that we're talking about cultural fusion together is when it's like brown people? And why is there not just 2 brown artists in a fusion show where there's also like Black work and Latino work and whatever? So it really depends on the space you're talking about because the US is in a weird place where some places are like decently saturated with South Asian artists and some places are just not at all. And I'm guessing the UK is there too, where it's just so industry dependent.
You started at the age of 5 for me though when you did competition work, and you started at
7, I think.
6 or 7, and you did like group organizing work, choreography things, and the first comp that you choreographed for, it won like a 16th place. You talk about that as well, but I want to talk about it from a race perspective, which you guys both talk about, being the only sometimes brown dancer in it. And I asked this of Brinda and asked this of Ishita as well. When you work, my question is about cultural appropriation and how you balance that into your work and the authenticity of it. Because sometimes when we, as let's take skin into it, when we go as a brown person to a tap class, and then when sometimes we're going into spaces which are not necessarily ours, but then sometimes when people who are not of our culture coming into our culture. But yeah, how do you balance that? And do you have that conversation in your head at all?
This one's so hard. I'll start with Convergence specifically, and then we'll zoom out, because I think, well, I'll let Ramita decide about the Bharatanatyam side, but I think on the taps, we deal with this issue a lot on the tap side, because there's literally 1 Black person and 1 Indian person, and everyone else is white, right? And tap is a Black art form, so it's like really difficult.
Gregory Hines, one of the greats, like one of my favorite tap dancers.
Yeah, and so part of it is, so there's a weird, these 2 things are going to feel like they're conflicting each other, but hopefully I can explain why they are. So the first thing is you have to know your form before you bother to make any sort of like embellishments or changes to it, right? Like, so until like you have studied Bharatanatyam properly or studied tap dance or whatever, and like you have trained in it seriously enough that you have like mentors of that culture or like this person knows what they're doing, like you just have to do that first, and that's like step 0. You can't do anything else until you do that, right? Which like, you know, Ramita trained Bharatanatyam for like who knows how many years. She still literally goes and visits her guru, right? So like there's that level of like commitment. And like once you do that, I think that the thing that's a struggle in our positions is like, again, when we created a Convergence, our goal wasn't to be these like sort of like pillars of like what it means to unite cultures. Like we were just symbolizing our 2 understandings of what like our meshing of Indian American culture is like. And I think the most important thing to realize is like, there are an infinite number of ways to blend 2 cultures, and neither of them, like very few of them are like better or worse than others. Some of them can be inauthentic, but like, for example, Ishita's work is almost like the exact opposite of ours from one perspective, because she tries to blur the boundary between the two cultures, right? Whereas like for us, it's very clear, like, these are the Bharatanatyam dancers and these are the tap dancers, and there's never like a question about that. But that doesn't make like her expression of it any worse or ours any better or whatever, right? So it's this weird combination of, you first have to truly understand what the two styles are and the way that they exist, but then you have to be comfortable with like my interpretation. Like if we were to take like a different tap dancer and a different Bharatanatyam dancer and tell them to create stuff, it could probably, I mean, Brinda does that sometimes, and it looks like completely different from Convergence, right? And that's okay for there to be two completely different interpretations of how to unite the exact same two styles with people who have studied all of those styles equally well, right? And I think that helps you feel like there are wrong answers, but there's not just one right answer, if that makes sense. Right? As long as you're doing your work correctly, there are multiple or infinite right answers, which is why this work is so fun, because you can do it forever. But there's that. So that's the appropriation side of things. I think the other thing that is a struggle when you, like if you take Mystic India, for example, it has a very diverse cast, right? There's Indian men and women, but there's white men and women, there's black men and women, there's like people of every color in that show. And I think the thing, especially in this day and age, is people who don't understand are very quick to comment without doing any work on what the background of the creativity is. What I mean by that is, like, we were in Houston with Mystic India doing a gig like a month ago, and one of the audience members came up to me. There happened to be no Indian girls at that gig. It was just 3 boys and 3 girls, and the way the cards fell, like, the Indian girls were on the West Coast because that was their availability, and like that was just how Indian girls doing this gig. And she was like, whatever. And I was like, you don't understand like how much work these 3 girls have put in to learning the different dance styles of this culture, to how much they teach about it. And like, they're better trained in some of these styles than some of my brown friends. But like, you haven't bothered to understand what our rehearsal process is like, the respect that they bring into the room. Like, they send us Bollywood songs that like I haven't even heard of sometimes, right? So like, they're really invested in the culture, but people are very quick to comment without knowing that, because they just see, oh, there's 3 white girls. And like 3 white girls doing Bollywood can be appropriation, and like 95% of the times it is, but is not necessarily always the case. It depends on who's doing that. But people really struggle to take that level of nuanced approach of like, hey, Ramita, why did you make that choreographic decision? And let's have a conversation about it. They just see like, oh, Ramita had white people in that video. That's a problem, right? They're not able to have that level of distinction. And so the way I approach that is just like, you don't know shit about like how we created this work. And so like, if you want to make judgments based off of 30 seconds of an Instagram video, like, have fun. But like, we know that we've put in the work, and our mentors and the people around us know that we've done this with integrity. And if you don't want to bother to like invest yourself in understanding why that's the case, then like, have fun being trigger happy on Instagram and feeling like you've done anything. Because making those comments without doing any work doesn't move the world forward in any way whatsoever, right? Whereas like, the dancers we've created understand these cultures in a different way because they've actually invested the time, and like, they're going to go on to be more accepting people because of that experience. And like, that's the like gift we've given them, no matter what like some random uncle or auntie thinks on Instagram, right? So that's my perspective.
Similar. I mean, I agree with a lot of that. I think just speaking to like the competition world a little bit, there's like a lot of I said there's a lot of racism, there's a lot of appropriation. Next time he judged the competition as like he has a sticky note, and he's just like, you know, a gay white man, but he tallies the appropriation. Like he makes like a list of like all the like things that are insensitive. There's a lot. And so we play, but all that to say, like, that all really, there is a fine line. The issue there is like 9 times out of 10, it's just something flashy they saw on YouTube, and then they want to like take it and they put it. They're not hiring brown people. They're not like actually getting that education or that training from someone. But then, you know, sometimes it is hard. I think that like places where like we are teaching white people like in dance style, whether that's Bollywood or classical, and like it is tough. You have to like really be careful, and we both I think created like ways to discuss it and to actually like share it in an important way where it's not like someone like a YouTube video and it's like, oh, okay, they're dancing, they're like doing it's like we really try not to do that because it makes it feel like not helpful to anyone. but today, the class that we taught, it's my aunt's class at Rock. She's been a Bharatanatyam dancer for 60 years, 70 years. And I like went to teach her class, and we did like she brings me in once a semester to do a more like kind of like to show them what else you can do with Bharatanatyam that's more similar to like things they know. And the thing is, all of these people are training for a whole semester in Bharatanatyam, so it's cool. It's like not like the piece that we're teaching them is not just like this day. It's like they have a whole semester of training, but if you just saw a quick video, you wouldn't know that. So it is like a little bit nuanced, but I think you just have to like go back to the root and think and like ask like who taught this that on you, like are they coming from an informed place? That's for any culture, right? Like because even with tap or even like things like Indian dance are really overt, but for hip hop or tap, it's like you need to like, or even if it's a white person teaching another white person, like they need to be informed about like what they're teaching and what they're sharing. And that's period for anything. Like you just need to know what you're teaching and know the history of it.
If you remove, and I'm sure a lot of people have, whether you're brown or not, if you remove your family, which is like your support group, your grit, your conviction, your confidence, your faith, and all of the things that make you who you are, your hustle on, which is like arts work and TEDMed and Columbia University, if you remove all of these things, would you still continue to do what you're doing today?
I honestly don't think so. I think my first year in New York, I was like, I'm gonna be a dancer and I'm not gonna do anything. I like made a decent amount of money through dance, but it was like my first year, so it wasn't enough to like fully live off of it. Really like running crazy, working a bunch of like jobs for like $20 an hour and like just scraping money. I used to do and like make literally $30 to sit there and be like, and it was like really and that was like hard years. That's when Vikas and I too. It was just such a tough year because I personally, I think, always split my energy and time between like school and dance growing up, and then in college still. Like I really loved like what I was doing in school. I loved thinking about business. I loved thinking about I studied healthcare management. I love those things. And now I like really product design, and it's just, I just think like there's so many people that say like you need to do one thing, but having these other things in my life that have like one given me stability. Like I've been consulting for 4 years now. It's the reason that I like feel like I can do the dance jobs that I am excited about. I feel like I have the flexibility to do them. It's been really great. It was like find the fit, but why I kept going through the pandemic. It's why I would have been able to build arts work. It's like all skills through that. So I just think it's like enriched my life a ton. And it's like what you said about like the ebbs and flows. Like it's literally the reason I don't feel such drastic ebbs and flows anymore, is that like I'm actually really happy with the baseline. Like if the week is a slower week and it's just like me on arts work or tomorrow health, like with a lot of weeks, I'm extremely like happy, like even with that. So I think like for me to find stability, and it doesn't make us any less of artists, it actually makes us better artists, because we have time to plug into something else. And like
Vikas, do you want to go? Or do you want to hold off? Then I quickly like.
Yeah, if you want to like quick do some stuff
Yeah,
with Ramita, and then I can answer once she pops out. That's fine.
Oh, okay, cool. I don't know why I thought there was a cat in the background near your shoulder.
No, I had to plug in my phone, and so I'm trying to figure out a way to prop it up without it sliding.
Got it. The next question, let's talk about arts work. Let's talk about Tomorrow Health, TEDMeg, and all of those wonderful things that you have done. For those of people who are in the UK or in Europe, Arts Work is a platform that Ramita and Nick have created. Nick's full name I do not know. Ramita will say in a bit. It's kind of like Spotlight. If you have a Spotlight page meets Backstage, meets LinkedIn. Spotlight's in the UK predominantly and in Europe. meets, yeah, like I said, backstage meets LinkedIn. It's yeah. Let's talk about artwork.
Yeah, so artwork I think came out of the pandemic, and this need that like literally 4% of artists lost work, and but I think even before that, it's unsustainable to be an artist. Like Vikas and I have talked a bajillion times about like what like, it's really like it's just hard, like unstable field and career, and there are like a bunch of like town issues. There's a lot of barriers. What we're thinking about with artwork, so just like out of the gate, you know, the idea is a link for artists. So when the pandemic started, we saw a lot of people making LinkedIn profiles, and we were like, okay, well, we could just have something like this that gets you the jobs that you actually want as an artist and allows you to like, it's such a network-based industry, like half our work comes through network. So an easier way to like have all those people be in place. Now what we're thinking about, like we, you know, kind of just needed to get something out there. And now we're honing into the vision of it and honing into what the product does. And like our big metric right now is like, okay, actually getting money into artists' pockets. So that's through connecting them with jobs, connecting like side jobs. But then, so there's so many of us that like, it feels like you need to be hired to be an artist. But a lot of us, like half the work that we do is actually like, we are the business ourselves. So like kind of flipping the switch and being like, okay, this is my work. You can book me for like a private. You can book this. You can book me for choreography. Like having it easy for the artist to offer and then just like hired for their. We're kind of playing like a few models. We're in a like testing phase right now of like playing with those models to see kind of what gets the most value to artists, gets the most money into their pockets, makes them feel like the most secure and stable. And to be honest, it's not going to work. Like we're kind of honing now to, you know, we can't solve it's like what we've run into over and over is like, there's so many problems. There's so many problems to be like, we've all talked about. So we're now like, you know, so really scoping down and thinking like, what are one of the problems we can really solve, and operationalize, solve for people. And if that's not like, if that doesn't work for every artist, that's okay. But we're actually really not trying to compete with like the backstages and casting networks of the world. That's extremely saturated, and like those top down jobs are always going to be bureaucratic. What we're trying to think about is like, how can like peer to peer help each other, and how can like the entrepreneurial work that we already do, how can that be like consolidated? How can we just like, make money for those things that we already do more consistently, more regularly? How can all that be streamed? So that's kind of what we've been thinking about, but it'll keep changing. The thing about a startup is like it keeps changing. We have some really, really awesome advisors that we just brought on who we haven't announced yet, so I'll share later, but we're really excited, like in tech as well as like in creative industries. And so it's good. It's just like it's something we both like are really passionate about, and it's like problems that no one else cares who aren't artists. Like no one like knows how bad it is, but it's not ideal, you know. So important problems to solve.
If I take away like the values my family instilled in me, then like absolutely not, because an arts career, A, is just hard, but then B, as just like the only person who looks like you is trying constantly to like break barriers in your space is, I wish I could understate how exhausting it is, but it's just not possible. And I think A, it's only because I came from, you know, an upper middle class family that was able to like provide me an education so I could do something else while doing my dance career. And they always, similar to Ramita's parents, they like the two things they instilled in me were like, do what you're passionate about and like work hard. And because of those, that's the only reason I'm here where I am, is like because of my work ethic, and like same with Ramita. So if I didn't have that work ethic instilled in me, like I would have quit so long ago. And also, like, dance is expensive, right? Like, part of the reason I am able to be where I am is because I didn't just train in tap, but I trained in other styles, and that costed money, right? And my parents are able to do that. So, like, maybe in an alternate world, I'd be, like, teaching still at, like, a local studio or something, but I wouldn't be, like, professionally performing the way I am in New York, because, like, it takes a level of like financial risk that like my parents have never financially supported me post college, but like if push came to shove, I knew I could like take a loan from them if shit really hit the fan. And I think knowing that allowed me to take a level of risk that like other people just don't have the privilege of taking. Like I could be a full-time dancer right out of college. And like, again, I financially survived. Did I save anything? Like, heck no. But I supported myself that first year. But it was like, if I knew if it came, like push came to shove and I needed a month's of rent or something, I know I could borrow it and pay it back like a few months later. I figured it out. And like, that's a level of privilege that like a lot of the world doesn't have. And I think that's why like Ramita's arts work is so important. And we feel so particular about it. It's like, right now in the US, like only people of privilege are even able to be artists. And like, that's messed up, right? Like, because then you're skewing the voices of like who is creating art. And like, that's not representative of like the population. And so like, I think it's important to acknowledge, like, had I come from not as privileged a family, like, I don't think the desire might have been there, but I don't think it would have materialized.
You have this passion for self-care and healthcare. Like I said, TEDmed. For those of you who do not know, I love TEDx talks, and TEDmed is a brand. So like, it's a brand. So where do you get this passion from?
My like whole family is in healthcare, very local, but they're all in healthcare. I was pre-med for most of college. I've always I wanted to be pre-med and a dance major in college. We didn't have a dance program. Work out that way, but I don't know. It's always been interesting to me. I think I studied management, so thinking about it at like a system level is interesting. How different things fit together, and it's just been like all of my consulting work has been in healthcare. So TEDmed was awesome. I think that was like a cool opportunity, like really at the intersection of like healthcare and like honestly like creativity, like just the whole point of it, like sharing stories about like talking about healthcare in really creative ways. Like that's the whole point of TEDmed. And then I got to run a program called Thrive, which is like sharing these like entrepreneurs and connecting with entrepreneurs with resources. So it was cool. That's really cool. I work for another company that does like durable medical equipment distribution right now. So it's way more super. And I'm on like the product and marketing side. So anyway, it's just been like a field. I've terrible healthcare. I'm literally probably the worst. It's healthcare in self-care totally out the door. Like I knew what Vikas. I like don't. I don't take care of myself.
Both of us, it's really funny. We're both awful at taking care of ourselves, but when the other person, we're like, oh my God, we need to take a break and like have some wine and whatever. And we yell at the other person all the time, but are so awful at doing it ourselves. It's like really crazy. One thing I want to add about art's work that Ramita didn't like quite say in her story, which I think is important for viewers to hear, which is like, yes, it was born out of the pandemic, but like the idea was festering for so long. Like the number of times that like we'd had conversations and she's always like, it's like, I want to find a way to provide healthcare to freelancers. Like there was all these problems that came up. And so like when the opportunity presented itself, like, yeah, okay, art's work was created. But I think like people need to understand like there's work that happens like in this building behind the scenes. And then there's a moment where it explodes, but like that didn't come out of like nowhere. I think people think sometimes like, oh, she was just like opportunistic and like the pandemic happened. Like that's not really what it was. It was like there was this problem building. And then when it like there was a moment in society where it became so obvious that like the stars aligned and it all made sense. But I think it's really important for people because like it was the same thing with Convergence. We were talking about it, we're creating videos, like, and so I think it's just important for people to understand that like whenever these sorts of projects launch or whatever, that there's just all that time beneath the surface that no one sees or really hears about. But like that's really how the creativity starts and why the idea was born in the first place.
Yeah,
it's just like important for people to like hear that.
And I think speaking like Vikas and I have had so many conversations about like it's cash flows is such a problem, benefits problem, like awesome, like resource guy. Like when the pandemic hit, he like made a list of resources for freelancers, and it's because it's such a like underserviced area, and no one knows, right? We've been doing research around like side jobs, what people do for work. Everyone does something totally different. No one knows how much. No one knows like where to find side jobs. is kind of scattered and like no one talks about this stuff. It's like you get handed a piece of paper that says here's your side job. You get handed like a list of, like, I still to this day, I'm 26. I figured out how to get like a Cobra extension, but like it's so hard. It's so hard to do, and no one talks about it, really taboo. And yeah, all this stuff festers for so long, and they're just real human problems. Like I feel like Nick and I, since we were in college, we have a running list of like things that suck in the straight up. Vikas and I vent about this stuff like all the time. So it's just like, yeah, it's all brewing.
It was it from a get-go that you kind of knew you needed, I hate using this term and please correct me if I'm using it in a negative way, but like a admin logical route, or it was just something that naturally happened?
No, I actively chose. Actually, funnily enough, like after college when I was deciding whether to full-time dance or not, my parents encouraged me to full-time dance. Well, I was like, should I kind of do this, but kind of not do this? And they were like, if you don't do it now, like, you're going to regret for the rest of your life, like, what if I had done it? Which was, like, so accurate. But I was full-time dancing, teaching, choreographing for 4 years, and then I just had, like, a mental break point. Do you guys have, there's, like, in the U.S., there's this famous diagram in college of, like, there's a trifecta of college, and it's, like, you pick 2 of the 3, which is, like, social life, studying, and sleep, and you pick 2 of the 3. It's a thing that they always say in college. Like, you either have a social life and you study, but you don't sleep, or like whatever. It's a meme in the U.S. And I always have felt that in the arts, there's 3 things. There's like creative inspiration, there's financial stability, and there's career growth. And you can almost always find every job you have. There's a lot of jobs that have 0 of those 3. Firstly, right? That's where you start your career. A decent job has 1 of those 3, and if you're lucky, a job has 2 of those 3. But as a freelancer, you try and balance things out so you have an equivalent balance, right? And what I realized as a freelancer was, in order to support myself in a city like New York, and I'm not saying like making a shit ton of money, just to be able to like not have pennies, 95% of what I was doing was stuff that was like kind of okay, but was really just paying the bills, like judging dance competitions and doing a lot of stuff that I didn't like doing. And so I was traveling so much that when I got back to New York and I had like my day off of traveling, I didn't have time to do the things that I creatively wanted to do because I was so tired. And I was like, what the hell is the point of this career if I'm not even getting to do the things that creatively inspire me? Like, why am I even doing this? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And I called actually one of my top mentors, Anthony Margerato, and I was like, I canceled all my work for 3 weeks, and I went to a coffee shop every day, and I like journaled my life out and like talked to a therapist and talked to friends. For 3 weeks, I was like, I'm just taking a break. And when I talked to Anthony, he was like, dude, you have the like beauty of having another thing that you care about, which is more stable and it gives you your financial stability, so you have creative freedom, and it gives you your diversity of thinking. Like, why would you not do that? He's like, I only have 1 passion, so I have no choice, but like you have 2. Yeah. And I think that perspective was a useful, like, oh, I like this other way of thinking, and it gives me the time to like really, when I have the creative time, and I really value it. And it allows me to say no to some dance opportunities that other people would have to say yes to just to make money, but because I have another way of doing that, it's okay. So now that I like kind of lived that 2-part life, I'm like, oh, this is fantastic. But it actually kind of makes me sad for the people who don't have that ability, which is why arts work and stuff like that is so important, because like a lot of people have to make that choice between financial stability or like pursuing something that they like, and it's like really sad that they have to make that choice. So I was lucky that like I actually love my engineering work, and so to me it's a pursuit of 2 passions, but a lot of people do it out of financial necessity.
I wanted to talk about a business perspective, and I think you're very authentic in your passion for artwork and in the work that you do. So I'm going to ask you these 2 questions, and you have 2 minutes to answer, and then we literally have to play a game because that's a part of the thing. You have to play a game, which is you can either talk about your artistic voice, how you create, how you process things, how you do choreography, and within that, if you can answer whether as a dancer you need to be flexible and have certain lines or things like that. Do you know what I mean? Touch upon things like that. Or second, which is when you are an entrepreneur and you have to be authentic and passionate about the product that you're putting out, but then you have to think about revenue, return on investment, and profitability, and playing the game. And then the digital space comes into that because that's used as a medium to profit your business. How do you strategize or differentiate between authenticity, the root of what you want to do, versus business, which plays into numbers, which plays into playing the game, let's say?
I'll go with the authenticity one. Okay, I think that, I mean, firstly, going from like a creative career, like our jobs as artists are like extremely entrepreneurial. Like we're all owning our own businesses. Like there's so many memes about like being your own, you know, photographer and tax accountant and blah. Like
You did one on artwork. Check it out. It's a reel there.
it's just completely true. And so that, like, I think like prepared me out very well, like for Convergence firstly, and then also for artwork, like just knowing that like how to have an operational mindset and like think about revenue and about all of that stuff. I think that authenticity is like really, really important, and it's important to me. I think that you know, it's just personally in my life, it's something that I value very highly. But that doesn't mean that you like lose the revenue and lose the like financial aspect of it. I think you have to like strike a balance in the middle. As we've been doing art, we actually had this call with a investor once who he was like, oh, you should get like creator economy, like this is booming, it's like this whole big space. And like he was like talking about like influencers, TikTok, like that kind of thing. And then just like the way that like I think it was just there was like he really wasn't kind of understanding our space and like the people, and we were like, oh, I mean, like the things he's saying are valid. It's just that's just not what we do, and that's not what we serve. And like, to be honest, there are like thousands of products for the creator economy. Like we know that this demographic is like who we want to serve. We know that like what we care about, and like we are going to make a revenue stream work in this space for the people to solve the actual problem that we want. I think that like if you don't have something you really care about and are just money, like what's the point? Like you can make another tech product, but you have to have like something that you really care about. That problem of like artists not being able to do this career, it makes me emotional. Like how much I care about it. That's how much Nick cares about it. I know Vikas cares about it just as much. Like it just that like I think you need to have that authenticity, or like what's the point? And I think the money always I have my parents to thank for this too, of just like even in my career, like they were the ones that were like you have to care about what you're doing, and like money will always follow if you're doing something that like you care about. And so I not a lot of Indian parents that way, so I'm really they have their works, but they are, my dad does always say that, which I really appreciate. So anyway, that's my answer. Authenticity.
I want to ask how, and I think I touched on this, I'm intrigued to know how the space is in the States in terms of business and in terms of entertainment for A, being brown, and then B, I was going to ask this from Ramita, being a woman, and then when colorism is also brought into it, and then for yourself, I was also going to add being queer. How is it when you add all of those things? Is it like you're kind of like fighting a lot of battles, or it's kind of like, no, not really. It's just, yeah.
No, you are fighting battles. I don't think as a South Asian male in the tech space, there's much battle for me to fight at this point. Obviously, in the U.S., like that, you know, we have enough representation now with like Sundar Pichai being the CEO of Google and Satya Nadella. We have all these people who like, okay, it's like if anything, we're overrepresented. So that's not really a problem. I think as someone being like a multi-hyphenated person, like I'm an equal part engineer and dancer, and like that, you have to find the spaces that fit for you. Like now that I'm performing in Stomp, like that takes 25 hours of my week, but I have time to do other things. And it took me a while to find like a startup, which was like, look, I want to commit like 30 hours a week to you guys. And that doesn't mean like I don't care. Like in that 30 hours, I'm going to be very committed to you, but also like acknowledging that I have this other thing that I'm like not giving up because I'm performing in my dream show. And like, I think the problem with South Asian culture is like, if you're not doing it like 60 hours a week, you're not committed or something, you know. I'm like, no, honestly, like in the time that I'm working for you, I'm gonna bust my ass. But like when I'm in show, like I'm in show, and I'm not gonna be responding to Slack messages or whatever. And like we have a bit of at least South Asian American culture has a bit of like hesitancy, but like drawing boundaries is like selfish, and like that's not true. Like drawing boundaries is healthy, and like you are trading your time for a monetary value, but I'm only trading that time, not anymore, and that's okay to like draw that line. So I think that's the thing I thought in the being queer in the tech industry is difficult. The tech industry likes to think they are open-minded, but is open-minded in a very narrow sense of the word, which is such a like contradictory thing to say. So I do feel uncomfortable sometimes. Like, no one will ever say anything, but I don't know if you've ever been in a space where you're like, oh, like no one's saying anything, but I can tell there's like wheels turning on the screen. That happens a lot where I'm like, oh, my boyfriend. You can be like, oh, that's cool. But you can tell them being like, wait, you're Indian and you're gay? Like, well, you could see them like processing that. And so that's a bit weird. And I think the dance world is the opposite. Like, there's plenty of like gay people in the dance world. Like, that's not really a struggle. But like a lot of people just don't get it in the entertainment world. Like, when I got cast at Stomp and I like made my post and I was like, whatever. And I came in the next day and everyone was like, whoa, like I didn't realize this is like such a big deal. And I was like, dude, there's literally never been a person of Indian or South Asian descent in the show. And it's been around for 26 years. And like the show's creators are like all about diversity. But like when I asked them about it, they're like, we literally never get South Asian people to come audition. Like we got 2, and one of them was Reshma Gujjar, who got cast in the Las Vegas show. And the other one is me, who's cast in the New York shows. Like literally everybody who has walked through our door, we cast. But there's literally only 2 people who showed up. So I think the entertainment world struggles to understand like the types of barriers you face in something like that. Like there was someone complaining to me the other day about like an unfair contract and like, oh, you know, like I thought it was gonna be for 6 months. It's only for 3. I'm really bummed about it. And it's like, you don't understand the number of times I've walked into a room and they look at me and they cut me for how I look. And so like, I understand that like getting a 3-month contract instead of a 6-month contract is unfair, but like we deal with a level of unfairness that like a white person or can't even fathom. There's no tap dance show the number of tap dance shows I've gotten cast for pre-production for, which means you can be the person who acts as the lead when we're rehearsing, but when we get on stage, someone else is going to take your spot. Like I've done pre-production for 42nd Street for like so many shows, but I'm not allowed to get on stage because the show is about the 1920s and we're not people who look like us in the 1920s. And like, you don't understand how much that like hurts your heart to be like, I know I deserve to be up there because like I was in the rehearsal space with all these people, but the second opening night comes around, like, thank you very much. You can go on to like do whatever else you want to do. And so people, because they don't see that like the entertainment world doesn't understand like how much we have to fight to like finally get that one show that'll be like, oh yeah, we'll put you in, like that's okay. So yeah, it's we fight a lot about it. I think in the entertainment world, it's impossible to dissect those two. Having gone from casting for Stomp now and seeing how they cast for the roles, like everything in the entertainment industry is like tokenism to some extent, right? Like, you know, the director thinks this character looks like a big, like, 2 of the Black members of our cast are talking about like another acting role that they both auditioned for. And like neither of us got cast in it, not because we're bad actors. They just thought this role is for a buff guy and neither of us are buff. And so like, you know, that's tokenism for like a buff. Does that character need to be buff? Like probably not, but like for whatever reason, that director feels like that character is buff. And so anyone who's not buff is just not getting considered for that role. End of story, right? And so I feel like everything in the entertainment world to some extent is like, we don't call it tokenism, we call it like character fit, right? What the hell that means, right? Like that means that like for whatever reason, director thought your character is like a white blonde girl. And so like, sorry, all the brunette girls are not getting cast, right? So for me, I'm kind of like, you never know why you were put into that role. Like it could be a combination of like, and it's not even just about you. Sometimes it's about like these 3 people work well together, and there was someone who's better than you in your character, but didn't work well with those 2 people, so they didn't make it, or like whatever. So for me, I've always just stopped trying to dissect the tokenism because I'm like, you in the arts world, you never know why you got cast over someone else, and it almost never has to do with talent, like almost ever. Like at that point, there's enough talented people in the room, and it has to do with like, that person was unavailable for the wrong date, or this person was too short, or I've gotten nixed from shows because I don't fit into the existing costume.
Oh.
So it's like stuff like that where it's just like, you have no idea. And so like, why do you bother? Like, you're just working yourself into depression trying to figure out, well, was I tokenized? Was I not tokenized? Like, you don't know. You got the job, end of story, make the best of it, right? Like, that's just how I feel. And then I think the most important thing, though, is acknowledging that, like, once you're in the role, right? Like I got cast for Stomp. They claim it's not because I'm South Asian. We'll take them at their word for it or whatever. But like, I got cast. Like now, what do you do with that, right? And that's like the important thing, right? And for me, it's like it's actually happened almost every show I perform. I get stopped on the way out of the theater because there's like a South Asian family in the audience, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, like we've never seen a South Asian person on Broadway before. Like this is really incredible." And so to me, like my duty at that point is not just to say thank you very much and walk away, but to be like, oh yeah, let's talk about the struggles South Asian artists face, and like, do you have a son or daughter who's like, you know, young and like interested in the arts and whatever, and like, here's my information if they ever want to message me about an arts career, because like, that's how you use the privilege that was handed to you for whatever reason. Who cares what the reason is?
Yeah.
But, like, that's how you use that to make it easier, because like, my biggest dream is that like, whenever the time comes, like, I can't count the number of South Asian artists on Broadway. I would love for that to be
there was an article recently. There's about 5 of you. 3 were featured on, and I think you shared it, and a couple of other people shared it as well.
So right now there's 2 in Aladdin, there's 1 in Hamilton, there's me, and I think I'm missing somebody who I don't know, because those 3 I know.
Yeah.
But yeah, the fact that like there's Broadway in the Park on Thursday, which is a thing New York does, where like each show does a segment.
I've seen it, yeah.
And so like, we're gonna do like a little meetup, but I'm like, I would love for there to be the day where I go to Broadway in the Park and like, we don't do a South Asian meetup because there's too many people. And like, how awesome would that be, that it's not about like our identity, but it's just like, these people work their asses off and they're in their show, and like, great for them, right? Which is like how it is for everyone else in Stop, right? Like, when they all post about it, it's just their friends being like, you worked your ass off and you deserved it. And like, I would love to get to that space where it's like, I mean, it's nice that it's like about my identity, but like, I would also love for it to just be about the fact that like, I worked for it and now I'm here. And so that's like acknowledging that we have the privilege of like being those first people and making it so that other people can come into the space is the most important thing. Because you can ask the same tokenizing question about a bunch of things. Like, why was I born into a middle class family? Like, did I deserve that? Like, probably not. But like, given that I have that privilege, like, what am I going to do with it? I think is a good question.
We're going to talk about 2 topics, and then we're going to move on to games, which is one, I would like to talk about queerness.
Okay.
And you smiled. And the second is your artistic voice mixed with your lecturer voice, which we'll just touch up on. What is your process?
Okay.
I don't know why I said it like that.
Yeah, choreographic process, like, actually my process of making moves like differs so much for the piece, which I think is great, but like the overall process first is like always about intention. And when I say intention, I don't even mean it has to be this deep emotional, like, I'm going to make a piece about like the glass ceiling that South Asians face. So I mean, that's great if you want to do that. But sometimes it's as simple as like, we're creating a new piece for Convergence repertory. And it's just like, okay, you know, we're getting asked to do a lot of like more like music that is classic Bollywood, but is still classical sounding. And we're like, we have a lot of more like emotive, like facially engaging pieces, but we're missing a more like high energy celebratory piece. And so, okay, let's find that piece of music and something that feels true to the forms and like whatever. So like, it always starts with some sort of intention, whether it's something like that, whether for like a competition studio or whatever. Like if it's a kid's solo, I ask them to provide me music options, because that gets me in their headspace. And like, write me like a short little paragraph, doesn't have to be like Shakespeare essay, but like, write me something about what these pieces of music mean to you, so I can like use that as a seedling to create the solo that is for you, not just like how I would dance to this music, because I don't have to dance it. Like, it's about you doing it, right? So whatever the intention is, I try and seed intention. Whether it's from my company, it's like what my brain or like whoever is creating's brain. Whereas if it's for another soloist, that's like about them. Then I listen to the music without thinking about steps or anything for like probably like 15, 20 times. And to me, it's like about like, I map out like the energy of what I see the dancers doing, which sometimes matches the music and sometimes is the opposite. Sometimes I'm like, the music is a bit too low here, so like they need to be higher energy. And so I like graph that out. And then I try and find like, okay, what types of tools am I going to use to convey this energy? Because like as a tap dancer, there's sonic tools, there's like movement tools, we can use the space a certain way. And so I try and figure out those things like, okay, here I want to fill this space in sonically. Here, because like the music is already really busy sonically, like maybe sonically we won't be that crazy, but we're really going to move and use the space and move around a lot, and that's going to feel like big and celebratory. Or maybe it's going to feel crazy because we're going to have 3 different groups doing like things that are related but not the same, or something like that. And once I have that mapping, I only choreograph on the spot now. Once I have that top to bottom, then you have like a map, right? Of like, here are the various like guide signs I have to hit. So then it's like pretty easy, because then you're just choreographing like 4 8 counts at a time for this section, 4 8 counts at a time for this section. And then I actually found that once I have that guidepost, if I choreograph ahead of time, I overthink it. And I like think too much about like, oh, does this one sound placed in the right spot, or should the right arm be flexed, or all these stupid things, which is like, if you're kind of time constrained and you're just like, I have to come up with the shit now, you stop thinking about the details that like really don't matter. Like at the end of the day, if that one sound is removed or there, like no one's going to feel the pieces any different, right?
Yeah.
And so by like putting yourself in that like, well, the dancers are staring at me, so I better figure out something right now, and like helps you figure it out. And then if it's shitty, you fix it the next time. Like, you know what I mean? I think it's just knowing that like if you create something, you can always change it, right? It's always a draft. And so knowing that is like, there's so many times I set solos, I'm like, we're gonna try this idea, and it might be really stupid, but I'll let you know. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I thought that was gonna be stupid, but that was super cool. Or there's sometimes I'm like, yeah, no, let's come up with a different idea for that. But that's the fun of the creative process. Is like, let's try this thing, and like maybe it'll look good on you, but not on Ramita, or like whatever, right? But you don't know until you like see it.
I forgot to ask this question, which I really wanted to ask both of you, and Brenda and I talked about it, which is we talked about how there's the Alvin Ailey's, there's the Horton technique, there's Graham, and there's all these outlets for, like in terms of Black culture, there's Horton technique, which really takes influence and it modernizes something, and Alvin Ailey are kind of like the staples of it. And I was saying, why is it that when you have people like Galamandar, I think it's Galamandari, that Brenda has, and there's, you know, people who have classical disciplines in them, and then the students go off and do contemporary work, why is there no South Asian version of it? And she was like, because, and even you talk about it when you talked about Bharatanatyam in the podcast, you basically said how with white supremacy, and you were talking about how tap has even been broken away, and then to reclaim the space, and even in Bharatanatyam, like the because of colonization and certain things, how it was broken, and then people were trying to reclaim the space and finding it. Do you think when we use the umbrella or the term that is Indian contemporary or South Asian contemporary, that is now getting more codified, or you guys have codified it, or it's just like a little sprinkle on top of a donut to kind of just give it a title to make people understand at least the genre?
I would say it's the latter, because like all of us interpret it so differently, right? Like Kalamandir's artistic voice is so different from Convergence's, which is so different from Image, even though they're all like South Asian American or South Asian contemporary or whatever you want to call that. And like, unfortunately, none of us have like made our companies big enough that they are like an Alvin Ailey, right? Like none of us salary our dancers. None of us have like full-time grants from like New York City Arts Council. Like none of us are there yet. And hopefully like one of us gets there sometime soon. That would be wonderful. And then like that will get codified. But just the way the space is in the US right now is like, we don't have the support for that. First, the South Asians don't support it, which is a huge problem, right? Like all of our support comes from like non-South Asian organizations. I'm supported by the American Tap Dance Foundation. Ishita is supported by the New Jersey Arts Council. Brenda is supported by New York City Arts Council. Like, where are the South Asians in the US who all clearly have so much money to be supporting their own arts? It's like so sad to me that like we're scraping for money from like the same pile that like the modern dancers and the tap dancers are. And it's like, we shouldn't be, because that's like non-South Asian like support. But yeah, we're just not there yet. And I think our dream is that we get to that point. But you know, who knows whether that'll happen now or in 10 years or 100 years anymore. No, this is an important question, and I think it's important we talk about it, because people are not taught how to do things in a respectful way, and it's like really unfortunate. It's really all about prioritizing your relationship with that person, even if the context of that relationship changes. So I'll take like Amit for an example, who owns Mystic India. Like when we we've told him we were starting Convergence before we announced it publicly, and we said like, hey, we're going to start this company. We don't feel like it conflicts with your vision, because like you're Bollywood and commercial, and we're going the more like traditional route. We're not planning to use any of your dancers, and like we're not going to solicit any dancers. But like we're doing this because the American Tap Dance Foundation has given us a grant and whatever, and we're really thankful for the fact that like the whole reason we met is because of you. We've learned a lot of our understanding of lighting and formations undeniably from you, because we were in your show for 4 years, and we both are planning to continue with Mystic, but like we just want you to know that like this is happening, and like don't want you to feel blindsided by it. And like if there's anything you would like to request that we do or don't do in terms of our relationship with Atma, like we're not going to go like poach wedding planners from you on an Atma gig or something, but like if there's anything that you feel like you're worried about, like let's talk about it, because we respect you, and the only reason this exists is because of you. And so like, let's talk about it. And we sat down and had coffee about it. And he was like, okay, he was really chill. He was like, oh, I want to like financially support you guys and whatever. So I think it's like starting with that is like, especially right now, like all the South Asian creatives know each other. Like Brinda and I know each other, Ishita and I know each other. And it's not saying like sometimes, yeah, people have emotional days and like other times, let's say like, you know, Brinda's performing a Little Island and like, why are we not? Like, does that happen? Sure. But then at the end of the day, like her work is gorgeous and she deserves to be there like 100%. And so even if people have their moments of like not being at their best, it's being willing like to talk and be an adult about it. I think that's really important. If you talk to people as like, hey, I really respect you and I think there's space for both of us here and like how do we figure that out? Very rarely do people come at you. It's when you don't communicate that it's really disrespectful, right? Like had we started something and poached dancers from Amit and not even told him, he's gonna be like, screw you, I put in decades of work for this company and now you're gonna try and capitalize off of it, and like that's unfair.
Yeah.
So I think that's really because we've all recommended work to each other. I've recommended work to Brinda. When I'm like, Convergence can't do this. Like, Brinda, are you free? And I think we're, at least in the New York scene, I think we're really lucky that we all have that mentality of like, obviously, if work comes to Convergence, I'm going to take it for Convergence first. But if it's not a fit for us or we can't do it, like, you are all artists that I trust that can provide this client with equally good work, because I want the client to be happy at the end of the day, right? And so I think if we look at it at that, like, what is my goal? My goal is that the client has a beautiful, like, Indian American performance at their corporate event or wedding or whatever. And so even if that's not Convergence, like Ishita, I hope you have some dancers ready to go because this client is willing to pay for them. Then we all build each other up. And it's acknowledging that we're all creating work for each other at the end of the day. And I think if you see on social media, like everyone's cheering each other on.
Yeah.
I think but you're right, it takes one bad apple to break that. And that's why I think it's so important in training that into younger dancers, because like the first time someone breaks that trust, it's really hard to build that back up. And so I think that's the problem that people face is the first time someone screws you over, then your guard goes up and you're like, shit, what do I do? So, but it's all about respect and taking the time to like, I mean, Amit and I I don't even dance for Mystic anymore because I booked Stomp. But the day I booked Stomp, I called him and I was like, hey, if you're ever in a pinch for a show, I can ask for time off. And like, we have that relationship. And so we know that we have each other's back, even though I might not be dancing for Mystic anymore. I think that's what's important, right? Because your relationship might have started because you work together, but it should continue even when you don't work together, just because you're mentoring each other. That's really important.
Let's go on to talking about being queer.
Yes.
Let's start with something easy, and then we'll go back into it, which is your lovely partner. How did you meet? You thought he was attractive, clearly, as the game told. How long have you been together? And how does it feel to be in an interracial relationship?
So we met on Hinge, nothing like super fancy or crazy. But we met because, like on Hinge, for those of you who don't know, you can like answer questions. And
those questions.
He answered them really well. The question was like, what is your ideal first date? And like most people in New York would be like, go out to a club, go out to a drink, whatever, which like I'm from the Pacific Northwest, like that's fun, but that's not how I like get rejuvenated. And his answer was like hiking or bike ride or park day. And I was like, yes, absolutely. Because he's from the Pacific Northwest too.
Got it.
So our first date was the rooftop of the Met, which is free for New Yorkers.
Wait, so we have to pay for it? I have to pay for it?
Well, you have to pay to get into the Met. Once you get into the Met, it's free to go up. But like we don't have to pay to get in. It's like pay what you want to get into the Met as a New Yorker, which is really nice.
How do you distinctify if you're a New Yorker versus
driver's license? But there's that. Being an we've been together for just over 2 years now, like just hit our 2-year mark. But one of those years was COVID, which I feel like accelerates things.
Okay.
Being in an interracial relationship, it doesn't feel that weird or different to me because like so much of my life has been like that. Like there's no other brown people in the tap dance world, but then I also did a Bollywood show which was like mostly brown. So like I feel like my whole life has been this like weird mix of South Asian and not South Asian. So this just feels like another part of that. Okay. And he like loves learning about South Asian culture. So like he has his favorite Bollywood songs actually on like our Bollywood playlist that are like not my favorite songs but his favorite songs, and like vice versa.
Like what?
So he knows how to cook dal now and like paneer tikka and all these things. So like he's bought into it pretty fast.
I always felt like a fetish dating like white people, black people, or like Filipinos, or like Mexicanos, or things like that. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I guess I have not come across. There's not that many South Asian gay people out in even in a city like New York. Like at least on a like there
Really?
are people, but like meaning when you're on a thing like Hinge or whatever, like
Yeah.
like I've come across like maybe two, and like I matched on both of them, and like we weren't personality fits, so like whatever. But like
Yeah.
that's and like 98, like it's still when I see a South Asian person on like Hinge or whatever, I'm like, whoa, like it's not anywhere close to the norm at all. Doesn't mean there's zero, but it's still kind of like a surprise, which is sad, but it is what it is.
Fascinating. I mean, there's always dilmilshadi.com.
Yeah, somehow I didn't get on Bill Mill, so.
Let's talk about your queer journey because, by the way, I loved your Christmas story that you told on that podcast where you got an experience that. But I just want to talk about your queer journey because you said you didn't come out when you were in school and your parents were very open and receptive to it and they asked you lots of questions. My question is, which I'm very fascinated about, and I'm writing a play about it, which is queer sexuality.
Okay.
How one empowers that, what one's relationship to is that, and how does one embrace one's queerness without feeling like a stereotype?
Yeah, that's hard because I don't know if you felt this way. Like I think the reason it took me so long to come out is because I didn't see any South Asian gay men that I was aware of. And so my vision of what it meant to be queer was like white Twinkie gay men, right? Because like that's all.
White Twinkie.
Like, say it again.
White Twinkie.
That's like what's perceived in like the media. I feel like always on like a TV show or whatever, they're always like it's always an effeminate gay man that's like kind of portrayed on television. It's never like you never see the more masculine gay men or just like the bigger, beefier gay, or like what you see is like the skinny, like young looking, slightly effeminate like dude. And I was kind of like, I don't look like that, and like I don't want to look like that. Like, I'm tall, I have facial hair, I'm like not buff, but I'm also not super skinny. Like I just don't fit that vibe. And so, and a lot of I don't know if you guys have this problem in the UK. There's like a mainstream version of queer culture in the US that doesn't fit my lifestyle. So like mainstream like gay culture in the US is like people make a lot of money and they're always traveling and they're always partying, and so they're off at these like gay places like Fire Island or here or there, and there's like a bunch of gay people partying together and whatever. And it's like the most important part of their identity, and they spend a lot of money like expressing it, if that makes sense. And for me, I'm like, I am gay, yes, but like my ideal vacation is not going and spending a lot of money going to Fire Island and like being in rainbow Speedos with a bunch of other gay men. Not that like, if I did that, like sounds kind of fun, but like if I only get 2 weeks of vacation and I'm not going to spend one of my weeks doing that, I would rather go camping or go hiking in the Grand Canyon or like whatever. And so I think because I didn't identify with like the types of leisure that mainstream gay culture consistently associates itself with, I was like, so because I'm gay now, do I have to like always be going to like sweaty bars and picking up like 2 boys a night and like like all these like dumb things that don't make any sense. And so I think that's why representation is so important, because like you can see, being gay, there's like 70,000 different versions of what it means, and like hopefully somebody then that like kids now see growing up like, that person, I might want their life, right? And like if you don't have anybody whose life you want, it's really hard to like envision it out of thin air for yourself, right? And so I think that's where the stereotyping becomes hard, because then you're like, well, maybe nobody's living that life because you can't live that life, which is dumb, but that's how people think. It's like, well, maybe I'm supposed to be living this life or whatever. And that's where the stereotyping becomes a problem, because you start changing yourself to fit what you think is acceptable rather than like living your truth, which, as you know, as a queer person, it's already so hard to just acknowledge that sometimes you're like, maybe it's easier to just change this part of my life to like be acceptable as queer. And also because you've suppressed that part of your life for so long that you don't know what else about your life you're suppressing, right? Like, I didn't know. It's like, well, I've never gone to a gay bar before. Maybe I will like going and partying and being, and then I did it like twice and I was like, like not for me. So I think that's like the hard part, is like, you start asking yourself, like, is this stereotype me? Is it not me? Because like, you don't even know who you are.
Got it.
How do you like stand for yourself and not the stereotype when you don't even know who you are? It's like, that, right?
That's the question. Where do you stand with your, would you say with your sexuality today and in your relationship today?
I pretty clearly identify as like gay. I'm not one of those people who like my boyfriend actually is like, he's like, oh, I might be like slightly bi or like whatever. Like he dated women in college, and like not because he was like, oh, I want to date men. Like he thought he was really into his girlfriend at the time and like whatever. And like only now he's like, oh, I could never date a woman. But at the time, that was not his thought process. Whereas for me, like it was very clear that I was like, I like went on dates with women and like would try to kiss them at the end of the date and like could not bring myself to do it. Like there was no way. I was like, you are clearly very attractive, but I just like my body cannot do this. So for me, I'm just like one of those like I'm just really gay and that's just what it is. Where some people are not like that and that's cool. But yeah, so that's that. But I'm also like, at the end of the day, I want my like home with my husband and a dog and a garden, and like I want a pretty traditional family in that sense. Like that's just how I am. Some people are not that way, and that's cool. But like we're already talking about what puppy we're getting, and I'm like very excited about it.
Can you guys get a puppy? I want a puppy in this flat, but the stupid, like with flat, you have like just laws that you can't get them in flats, so you have to get a house. And my partner wants a house, and I'm like, no, are we doing a house?
Oh, like ever or just right now?
I don't like houses. I love flats.
Really?
I hate houses. I like flats. You don't hear about people breaking into flats. You hear about people breaking into houses. You don't hear about like rats or like mice or things like that in flats. You hear about. But I think I'm a very city boy person. So I just like I want a place in central London or in New York, and yeah, that's I want a flat.
No, that's not how we're like out of New York in a few years and going to move to like the Pacific Northwest and have more space and be by the water. Like that's like the dream.
How was it, by the way, being in COVID? Our relationship went like boom.
Yeah, I think COVID accelerated everyone's relationship, whether to like towards success or towards failure, like depends.
Yeah.
But for us, probably similar to you guys, like we had to long distance for the first 6 months despite living in the same city, because like he lived with 12 people, I lived with 4 people, and like he lived in this like 4-story house with like a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And like they weren't going to allow each person's partner to come over, because then your bubble would have been like 25 people. Like that would be insane. So we long distance until like July 4th, and then we would like only meet outside. And like that's part of the reason we moved in together, is like our choice is to long distance until this shit is over, which like who knows when that's going to be.
Yeah.
Or we move in earlier than we otherwise would have, and we took the risk and it worked out.
Did you make a conscious decision? I made a conscious decision to not be with somebody in a long-term relationship who was in the industry, and I also wanted somebody who was brown, and I was like, until that point I'm fine not having a relationship.
Yeah, I did not want to date. I don't know if I said no to entertainment. I said no to dancer for sure, like performing arts.
Yeah.
Like if someone was like a different type of artist, maybe like a painter or something, like maybe. But I thrive on like diversity of like thought process and thinking, and so to me it's so much more exciting to be dating someone who like is an industry I'm like interested in, like urban planning and like environmentalism and building greener cities is like something that's cool to me, but I haven't invested like my career in. So like being able to learn about that rather than like, if I was talking to a dancer, I'm like, I already spent my whole day on this. Now I'm going to come in home and talk to you also about like auditions. Like, no, I want to come home and talk about something else. Or like, I don't know if you feel this way. The way you talk about your career as someone who isn't in it is like a very different way of talking about it. And I think that's like fun, because like sometimes you have to break down things that like you wouldn't have to break down in your day-to-day. Like he was like, oh, so like why is Stomp like difficult with like the backstage of all the props? And I'm like, oh, you've never been in a show before to like understand how insane it is dealing with props backstage. Like, here, let me draw a picture of backstage for you and show you why it's insane. But like a normal dancer would be like, oh yeah, I get it. Like that's really hard. And so I feel like those types of conversations to me are what I thrive off of. So I'm like, I want to be dating someone who's different in that aspect, so I learn something. Is my perspective.
Agreed. Cool, let's play some quick games. All right, let's do this. This section of the show is called
Sip a Chai or Play with Rye,
which sounds nasty, but it's not. It basically means I'm going to throw some things at you. If you want to play, you play with Rye. If you don't, you sip your chai. Are you ready?
Scared.
Listen, I'm trying to get a game show off this, okay? Lisa, Linda, have you ever seen that video? Linda, listen, Linda. If you were a movie, what would the title of the movie be? By the way, this is rapid fire round.
I've already said I think I need a TV show called Why Is Nothing Ever Easy, because I just got into cancel flights, like cry at every like major trend. Why is nothing ever easy would be the title.
Tell us quickly the brief story about it, which you already have. Cancel flights, things like that. So it's about a cosmopolitan girl.
Everything is always harder than it needs to be. That's it. That's the whole story.
What would the title song be, the opening credits? What would it say? In 4, 3, 2, 1, you sing it.
I don't know.
If who would star in this show?
I think it's off of Never Have I Ever, to be honest. It's just like Never Have I Ever, but my own version, I think.
Mindy's suing you. She's suing you.
I would sell it too.
If you were a plant, what plant would you be?
I would be a jasmine flower. That's my favorite flower.
If you were a drink, what would you be?
A green tea shot. It's like a thing.
I have had it, but it's nasty. If you were a food, what would you be? Go.
White bread. No, actually, I have asked. Oh. Wait, because people Pop Rocks. I would be Pop Rocks.
Oh, you chose white bread. We're going with white bread.
Right, favorite food. That's why I said that.
If you were a dessert, what would you be? Which can be Pop Rocks.
Pop Rocks.
If you are a clothing item or a fashion trend, what would you be?
Jean jackets. Vintage.
Oh, love a jean jacket. All right. Now, this is called Have You Ever, the dance edition. So, have you ever had a wardrobe malfunction?
Oh, so many.
Wait,
So,
Ramita and I in Columbus, in Mystic, India, were partnering together. Do you remember this, Ramita? And 10,000 person theater in Columbus, and we hadn't tech that day because I had to do, like, I missed tech that day.
Yeah.
And we changed the formation, and we're partnering. We are dead center partnering. And I run up to her, and her leg comes up, and the back of her top just goes, whoo,
yeah, it was just like totally
on 2 TV screens, 10,000 people. And
What do
so,
you do?
So Ramita, like, we know each other well enough, obviously, at that point, like, I felt it, and I just looked at her, and she just started moving, and so I was like, okay, we're going to improvise off now. It's the middle of Giachile, so, like, what the fuck are we doing? So we're just, like, improvising off, like, she runs off with me and whatever, and the best thing is we finished the show, and our director goes, like, oh, I didn't realize you guys changed that section. That was nice. And we were like, that was not an intended change at all. But we were dead center. So, like, the center of the stage is now blank, and there's 2 couples on the ends of the stage, like, awkwardly doing this partnering without the leads. It was so weird.
I'm here for that. I'm here for that. Have you ever forgotten a step?
every time.
Yeah.
Injured on stage or a TV show?
My only broken bones. Actually, someone kicked me in the face during a rehearsal right before a show. And then I broke both my middle fingers. And one was also on stage. I like whacked someone. And then this is like probably not appropriate, but it was in college, and so all of our alumni come back and they like party during the whole thing. So this like drunk alumni gives me just like a glass of alcohol as an ice pack to like put on my fingers.
So you're getting like wasted at the same time you're like dying. Sip a chai or play with Rye, like I said before. Are you ready?
Sure.
If you were a movie, what would the title of your movie be?
Everything is always a surprise.
What would the storyline be?
I feel like it'd be like a comedy of some sorts, of like some person like trying to plan out their whole life and then like going through different junctures and how everything always goes the exact opposite of like what you expect it to be. Like almost like a game show of like people trying to be like, oh, haha, he thinks it's going to go this way, but it actually goes this way.
I'm here for that. By the way, I forgot to say this when you were telling me about hiking and meeting your partner. You should watch Looking. Is it Looking on HBO with Russell Tovey? And it's a really cool show. It's about this guy in a tech startup. They meet, fall in love, partners, all things fun. It's like a new age queer as folk situation.
Okay, we'll watch it.
What would the title song be of your movie?
I don't know.
You just sing it 4, 3,
Chaya
2,
Chaya
1.
would probably be the opening credit song just because I freaking love Chaya Chaya.
Is there going to be a remake of Chaya Chaya with Varun Dhawan?
Don't remake it. It's too good. It's not worth a remake.
There's going to be a remake. Everybody's going to get.
If Honey Singh does a remake, I'm going to like personally find him and like kill him. Like no.
What would the hook step be?
Hook step. Oh.
You know how there's like Kala Chashma.
Oh. I don't know, something like this.
If you were a dance pose, what dance pose would it be?
Dance pose. I don't know, something like really flaily and too exciting. I don't know, like a jump of some sort or something like that.
A jump of some sort. If you were a plant, what plant would you be?
I would be some sort of succulent, like maybe a succulent. They're like.
No, I know what succulents are.
Yeah, so some sort of
I
succulent.
watched Little Shop of Horrors. Feed me, Maurice, feed me. If you were a drink, what would you be?
Gin and tonic.
I've recently got into gin and tonic, pink grapefruit gin with elderflower tonic.
Oh, I haven't had elderflower tonic.
Dude, and like, such a gin. Gin is a world full of heaven.
Oh,
if you were a food, what food would you be?
food. That's a hard. I'd say an empanada.
Empanada. Never had it.
Oh.
Is it like tacos?
No, they're like fried. They're like, it's kind of like a samosa. You know how they're like the samosa is like fried but has like stuff inside.
Yeah.
Empanada is like that. It's like a Latin version of that, essentially. Like they have all sorts of stuff.
If you were a dessert, what dessert would you be?
Chocolate fudge.
If you were a clothing item or a fashion trend, what would you be?
Fashion trend, jean shorts.
Okay. I didn't do this with Ramita, but since you have time, I will do this with you. The section is called Most Overrated and Underrated / Best and Worst.
Okay.
Most best and worst advice you have given and taken.
Okay, best. We'll start. What is the worst advice I have given?
This is rapid fire. This is rapid fire.
I would say worst advice I have given. Oh yeah, I'll say this, but with an asterisk. Worst advice I've given is just like pursue your dreams without any sort of like asterisk or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, pursue your dreams, but like have some sort of like general plan of how you plan to get there, even if it doesn't follow that. Like if you're just like, I'm going to move to New York and dance and not think about like any reality, like that's dumb. Don't do that. And so I feel like when I say pursue your dreams, like you have to have some sort of like, you're not going to make money for your first few years. So like, what else are you going to do? Like think through that before you like, you have to pursue your dreams with some thought process attached to it. You can't just like casually, you know, like uproot your life and like move somewhere and just expect life to
Sound like Vikas uncle.
Yes. So that's worst. I think best advice I've given is for people. I often tell people when they're like worried about, people message me a lot about like, I'm considering a dance career, I'm really stressed about it. And I'm like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And like, if you like, don't take steps towards that now because of fear, then like, when are you ever going to do that? And I think like that's really important. Because if people are like, well, I don't know if I want to like leave my tech job or whatever. I'm like, if you're young and you have like tens of $1,000s of savings, if that you're still too scared to like take a leap, like,
Yeah.
you'd be more comfortable when you have a kid and a mortgage. Like, no, like do it now. So I think that's probably the best advice I've given.
Best and worst of your own choreography that you have created.
Best and worst. Worst definitely goes to, there was like like one of my first pieces of choreography was a competition tap group on a 6 to 9 year old age division. And
I thought your first ever choreo was to uncles when you were 6 and doing something like
that. Is true, but I like first competition choreography was 6 to 9 year old tap group. It was not great. It was really.
Do you remember any of it?
No, but like they literally like didn't change formations the whole dance. They stood in a line the whole time and didn't move. It was just so boring. It was not good. Best choreography I would say goes to, so there's no one has heard of this song. There's a song called Laura Keep by the Ship Shape, which is like a song that was featured on Singing and Dance. And then I created a like solo to it, and the artist like found it and reached out and was like, this is fantastic. I want you to like create stuff for all of my music. So that one is the one I'm the most proud of because it's like the most different from any of my, like I've never created anything like it. And so far, like before or after, there's never been a piece that like is as unique as that. So I'm really proud of that one.
Do you have it?
I think it's on YouTube.
Okay, send it if I can't find it. Most overrated and underrated pieces of theater or cinema. Quickly.
Most overrated goes to, what is the name of it? Inception.
You hate Inception? Wow.
I don't hate it. I just think it's overrated.
Okay, cool.
It's one of those things where, like, if you wouldn't have told me this is the best thing ever, then I would have enjoyed it. But because you told me it was the best thing ever, like, I was expecting more than it actually was.
I can see that. Underrated.
Underrated. There's a film called Vantage Point, which is like telling the same. It's like telling the story of like I think like a murder or something, but from like 7 different angles. So like it's like 20-minute like different like chapters about like from the viewpoint of one person, from the viewpoint of another person, and so like throughout the whole like 7 different retellings of the story, like what actually happened is revealed. But it's like really interesting because you're like watching the same scene from like different angles and different people's perspectives of what they did.
Okay. Advantage Point.
Yes, I think it's actually a UK film, but I don't remember.
I don't really tend to watch UK films that much unless it's Harry Potter. Most overrated and underrated dancer, choreographer, or teacher. Everybody takes the political side to this. I like to stir shit up.
Most overrated choreographer, I would say Sonia Taye.
Wow.
Meaning, like the first or second or third pieces of hers that you watch is like great, but once you've seen like 3 of them, you've seen all of them because they all have the same like 4 steps in them.
Yeah, but that's everybody. That's like what's her name as well? Who's
Stacey Tucci.
No, she's commercial. She's very much on Team Millie. I'll find her probably. She was a Beyonce dancer. But yeah.
Sonia is like great, but like the way people are like obsessed with her to no end, I'm like, she's fine, but like I don't think she's the end of the world. Most underrated choreographer, Erica Sobel, who's actually kind of well known in the contemporary dance world, but like her work is like an awesome mix of like the music. Do you know Tassandra Chavez, that name?
Yeah.
Okay, so she has like the musicality of Tassandra Chavez, but like with a level of emotionality that like Tassandra's work is sometimes so visual that like there's no like intimacy there. And Erica has like a crazy, and Erica's been around like way longer than Tassandra has, like predates her. To me, has always been one of the best contemporary dance choreographers. It has a crazy level of musicality, but like also emotional connectivity. I'll send you one of her pieces. It's like,
do it.
I love her.
Most overrated costume you have ever worn in a show, film, or TV, and underrated.
Most overrated costume?
Actually, let's do best and worst. Best and worst.
Okay. Meaning from the audience perspective or from wearing its perspective?
You.
For me, worst costume I've had to wear. Oh, for Gia Chalet in Mystic India, we had these. They looked great, but I just couldn't stand putting them on. There were these like little sleeves that had red sleeves that had this like red drapery, so they looked like fire. And so we're doing all this like stuff that like caused stuff to go around. But we had a 30-second change into it, and you literally had to like hang this thing on a pole and like stick your hand through the pole to get it like on, and then like take the pole off. It was like I never made that change, and half the time went off with like half of my thing draping off like this because I couldn't get my hand through it in time. Hated that. Best costume I've ever worn.
I just take the poles with me and dance with it.
Oh, that would hurt so bad. Best costume I've ever worn. The costumes we wore for Gagra for that show were beautiful. They were this like orange, black, and blue. They were just like a pretty standard like pajama, pant, kurta, and vest, but just something about like the coloration and the fit of those. I was just like always so pumped for that costume.
Got it. Most overrated and underrated actor or artiste?
Overrated Nicole Kidman.
Okay.
Like solid again, but she books every major like mother role in every single movie ever, and I'm like, why?
Well, it's Emma Thompson now. She books everything now.
True. Underrated actor. Oh, have you seen the film Boy Erased?
No. Boy Erased. I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's about like a guy who comes out to his like super Christian family is gay, and they send him to like a conversion therapy.
Got it.
That actor, he's only acted in that movie in the lead role. I've never seen him since, but I forget his name, but he's amazing.
I am so sorry to interrupt again, but we were just doing the section which is called Sip a Chai and Play with Rai. And in the game sections of the show, there are some segments which are visual, so it would not have made sense on podcast form. So if you would like to watch any of the visuals or the video, simply go to YouTube and just type in Chai with Rai to find the relevant episode. Also, I will link everything in the bio or the description below. But without further ado, let's get back to the end of the show.
Thank you so much. That concludes our game section. We come back to deep conversations, and my first question to you is, what words of wisdom would you give to yourself today?
I would say focus on what it is that you're passionate about and ignore what everyone else's opinions of what you should do are, because it's easy to get caught up in that as an artist.
Peaks and valleys is a question I like to ask all of my guests, which is, what is the highest point of your personal and professional life? What was it? What lesson it taught you? If you could share that with us. And the lowest is the same, personal or professional life. What was it? What lesson you learned from it? I am sensitive to people, so I will say this: if you don't want to share the exact story, you can share like the momentum. Do you know what I mean? So like sugarcoat it, broccoli, put cheese all over it.
I think in terms of a valley, I think most like transformative experiences has like been my first year in New York, and just like I think everything. I made a list at the like when I moved of everything I was scared of. I think every bad thing that could possibly happen like did happen. Which is crazy. And but it was such a like a pivotal learning time. And I think that like it taught me that like I can kind of like go through a lot and I on the other end with like positive attitude, and also like, you know, it dismantled so many beliefs that I had before, and just like challenged things that I think were like important to shed, like just like beliefs that like were important to shed. Really grounded. I think like it was definitely tough to go through all of that, but it's been a piece. I don't know. I really do. Generally now, like we were talking about this, like there are so many like there are a lot of jobs you can't talk about. There's a lot of jobs you know audition for or make through the whole process for, and then you don't get to do. But like there have been TV shows that like I'm in rooms with like absolutely incredible people, like look up to, and being in those rooms really I get so emotional because I'm like, holy crap, like no one can see this means so much to me. Or teaching kids at conventions, like we didn't have brown people to look up, like seeing if there's a brown kid that I see at a dance competition or convention, every single time I cry, like hands off person, but every time. And then recently, like I think I'm just super proud of like the work. Like this summer I've got a movie, a music video, a people workshop, a TV show, like all these things that, like I can't really talk much about yet, but like it's just I got signed by Coastally. Like I would have never ever thought that, like I could be able to do these things. So I'm just like really proud of like where I am, and I feel happy. And I think that's like the most important part of it, is just like it's not even about like whatever. It's just like I'm really happy. Like I'm happy with what my life looks like and career looks like, and I think it's like a high point now. So I'm really grateful for that, especially coming out of a pandemic. Like the pandemic was hard. It was really rough. Being able to come out and feel like good and secure and happy. Like,
let's start with valley. I would say my valley of my career was, we briefly touched upon this, that there was a time where like I took 3 weeks off to like really evaluate my life and like figure out if I want to be a full-time artist. Those 3 weeks were really, really hard because like we, like growing up as a South Asian, we'd never been taught to like deal with those moments of like mental instability before, and like, who am I? What do I want? It's okay to be scared and unsure. It's okay to like need to go to therapy to figure out how to prioritize yourself. Like there's so many things that came out of that were really positive, but like in that moment, it was like the scariest place I've ever been. And now that I've like been in that place of questioning, now when I'm there, I'm like not as scared anymore, because I'm like, oh, these are just phases we go through. But that first time that I was like, do I want my career to look like this? And do I want my life to look like this? And like, I don't know what I want. And like, I literally was like, thought everything was going to be over. So that was really scary. I would say my high point, I say this every year, to be fair, like every year I'm like, wow, this year I'm like closer to like what my ideal balance is, which I think is perfect, because to me, like life is just continually trying to get to like your ideal version of what things should look like. So like, I'm really proud right now that like I'm actually starting a job at a new startup in like a week and working for them part-time while I'm in stop. And like 18-year-old version of me would be like so proud that like, oh wow, you're able to like perform with a major show, but then also like do the like software work that you're really excited about. And you're able to do both without destroying yourself and working 80 hours a week. Like you're still able to have like a balance and have days off. And like, it's great. We don't teach people that they can have multiple careers. We teach people that like, you pick one thing and that's your life and that's what it is. And
Yeah.
so I think like 18-year-old version of me, and right now I'm like so proud of that because like I never thought that'd be a reality. And so it's like really cool to have that.
Alan Watts talks about that. Do you know Alan Watts?
Yeah.
He says it in one of his speeches. I think he says we tell people that they can't have it all. So yeah, that's a beautiful thing. All right, what does the future hold? What's the gift for you? And what's the favorite part of your job for you?
Right now, I mean, the future obviously holds some time on stage with Stomp, which I'm super excited about, but also we're working on a Convergence, like a full-length show. So I don't know how long it'll take to like incubate that and then like get people to bite on it. But that's like, for me, the next stage of my creative journey is like, you know, we've built like 15-minute sets that people are interested in, whatever, but I'm just excited to like, you know, whenever you do like 15-minute pieces of work, you don't have full control over like the lighting or the stage.
Yeah.
I'm just excited for like, you know, a full like hour and a half length work where like we get to control everything. So I'm really excited for that creative.
Lastly, the question is, what's your favorite type of chai?
Are there multiple types of chai?
Yes. It's tea. Chai is tea. You just have different types of chai.
Oh, like, I don't know. I just like normal. I like chais with coffee in them. Was chai also. So maybe.
You're not gonna like the answer to the question, but I'm very South Indian, so I always prefer coffee to chai. So
Is that a South Indian thing?
yeah, filter coffee is a big South Indian thing.
I did not know this. I'm here for it.
Well, everyone, that brings us to an end, and I hope you enjoyed that. I want to say a massive thank you to the guest for their time. Again, to mention, Chai with Rai is a pre-recorded live show, so to watch any of the videos from the show, simply go to YouTube and type in Chai with Rai to find the relevant episode. All of the information about the guest, myself, and the show will be listed in the bio. Make sure to follow, share, comment, and subscribe. Show us all some love, because isn't that what we want at the end of the day, some love? Your support really helps the show and the message of it grow and the people that are on here. Thank you again, and as I always say, breathe in, breathe out. I must go. Which means now I must go. I own that is copyrighted and I will sue. Joking. Have a great one and stay curious. Till next time.